arguments. In our last video, we talked about using environment variables to determine the path to a file or folder or user account or so on a target computer. Now in this video, we'll get into the thick of it by looking at arguments. Now an argument is a great way of relieving tension, and it's often great for our scripts too. Now if you consider a lot of commands nowadays, in fact, let's use an example. Let's take the ping command. At a command prompt, if you enter in ping and hit enter, it doesn't do anything. In fact, it'll actually throw up a message telling you about the available switches or arguments that you need to use before the command will work. Now if you type ping followed by a host name, then ping takes the host name as an argument and attempts to ping the host you specified in the command. Now our shell scripts are the same. We can use an argument as input to our script. So let's go and take a look at using arguments. Okay, so we'll go and open up Notepad and we'll simply type in our echo off statement that we're used to here, now followed by this line of code. Okay, now let's have a look at what we've got here. There's two simple lines of code that might look a little strange at first glance, but it'll become as clear as day in a moment. Now we already know what our first line does, but our second line here says if exist. If what exists? Well, %1. If %1 exists, we'll do something. But what will we do? And what on earth is this %1 anyway? Alright, well let's take a look at the next part of the line. Copy %systemdrive %/%1 to our user profile %/desktop. Alright, well we know from our previous videos that my %systemdrive% is my C drive, but there's that %1 again. Alright, so we know we're going to copy something from my C drive to my user profile, which from previous videos we also know is documents and settings /administrator for my account here, and then to the desktop directory. Alright, so we're copying something from my C drive to my desktop, that much we know. But the object which is referenced in this script here as %1 is the unknown quantity. Okay, %1 represents the first argument. This is the first thing you type in after the name of the script. Alright, well let's save this and we'll see what I mean. So I'm just going to save this one here in my scripts directory as arg.bat, and I'll hit save here. And now we'll go and open up a command prompt. Alright, so in my command prompt I'll type in the name of my script, which is arg.bat, and now we need an argument. Okay, well let's take a look at what I've got on my C drive at the moment. So I'll click on start, open up my computer, and then our C drive. And okay, here I've got a new text document that I created in an earlier video, so why don't we just go and use that. So back here on our command prompt, now don't forget we're already referencing our C drive with our system drive environment variable, so we'll just need to type in new text document.text, and that represents our argument, and we'll hit enter. Okay, so our %1 in this case was the name new text document.text. Now you see, that's the power of arguments. It allows more flexibility in a script because we could use this for hundreds of different arguments rather than those that are available from an environment variable or simply from hard coding. And there we can see the text file has copied over here to our desktop. Now if you need to add two environment variables, we could simply add a space after our first one here and reference it using %2 and then %3 and so on, all the way up to %9. Alright, well take note though, why didn't we start here at %0? Well, when you run your batch file, %0 is already taken up by the name of the script, so in essence, arg.bat is %0. New text document.text was %1, and anything after that would be %2 and %3 and so on. Alright, well let's use another example. Okay, here we have another example where we're simply echoing out our first argument as %1, our second as %2, our third is %3, and then we're echoing out our 0 argument, which is of course %0. Alright, so let's save this and let's go back to our command prompt and we'll run the same script again, which is arg.bat, and we'll hit enter. Okay, now running it as it is, you saw here our first argument is blank, our second argument is also blank, our third's blank, but our fourth argument, which was the 0% argument, has taken on the name of the script, arg.bat. Now that's because, of course, we didn't provide any arguments on the command line. So why don't we go and do that? We'll just enter in here arg1, arg2, and arg3, for example, and now we'll hit enter, and this time we can see our first argument is indeed arg1, the first line that we put here. Argument 2, of course, is our second argument on the same line, and argument 3 becomes our third one, and of course our fourth argument, which was argument 0, is actually the name of our script. Okay, well let's go and take a look at another option that we can use here for our arguments. If we go back to Notepad, and at the bottom of the script we'll enter in a new line, echo all arguments as % with an asterisk. Now this line will show all of our arguments at once, but this % asterisk can also do something else. Now you'll recall that we talked about there only being %0 through to %9 as being available arguments, and that's largely true, but if we save this and go back to our command prompt and run this again, we'll just add in a couple more arguments of 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 and 11, and this time we'll hit enter. Okay, now we can see arguments 1, 2, 3 and of course 0 defined, and on the last line we can see all of our arguments with the exception of %0 are echoed back to us. So here's an example of using %* in action. Alright, well let's go back to Notepad and we'll delete everything bar our first 3 lines here, and I'll just save this and we'll go back to our command prompt. Now let's say we have a file name that we want to pass to this script, and let's say our file name contains a space. Now we will need to enclose the file name in quotes as we saw before. Say for example we've got a file name called newfile.txt for example. Now as you can see here, we do need to enclose this in quotes because we have a space. Now if we take these quotes out and we simply hit enter, you can see here that our script interprets new and file.txt as 2 different strings. So of course what we will need to do is go back and need to quote our string here, then we hit enter again, and now we can see that the first argument is indeed newfile.txt. But what about these quotes that we've got here around our string? They got echoed back as well, and if we were passing this value to another command within our script, we might have a problem with these quotes. So let's go ahead and remove them. So we'll go back to Notepad, and we'll come up here between our % character and our number 1, and then we'll add in the tilde character. And you'll find this character on the left of your number 1 key. Just hold down shift and you got it. Now this tilde simply tells the script to remove the quotes from the argument. So let's save this and we'll go run it again. Okay, now we can see down here that newfile.txt has been brought back as our first argument, %1, but the quotes have been removed. Okay, this sure tells us the name of the file and it works great, but what if we want the full path to our file? Well, we can simply go back to Notepad, and after our tilde here, we'll just enter in the F character. So we'll save this and go and rerun our script again, and now we can see that the full path to our file is c:\script/newfile.txt. Okay, well let's run through a few more of these, but I'm just going to paste these in here to make my life a little bit easier. Okay, well let's start at the top here. Our %1, we've seen that before, it just displays our first argument that we input with the command. Our second argument over here with our tilde key simply removes any surrounding quotes, and we saw that a moment ago. Now our next one, which we also saw, adding in the F and the tilde, simply resolves to a full path name and of course removes any quotes. And if we substitute the F over here for a D, that will just expand to a drive letter only. Using a P here expands to a path only. Using the N here simply displays the file name and removes any file extension. Of course our X here, as we can see, simply just displays back our file extension. Now using our S simply gives us back the old DOS 8.3 short names. The A over here gives us the file attributes. A T shows us the date and time. Our Z gives us the file size. And our final one here, $path with a colon, simply searches all of our directories in our path environment variable, and then what it does is it gives us back the first fully qualified name of the first one it finds. And if it's not defined or the file's not found by the search, then it will just give us back an empty string. Now I might also point out that you can join these together as well. So for example, if you wanted to expand the argument out to display the full path to the file, which would ordinarily use the F1 up here, and we wanted to display this back using short names, we could simply use an FS up here. Okay, in this video we looked at using arguments in our script so users can provide some input. Now arguments are a great way of adding flexibility to a script, so you don't have to hard code a file name or a path or a host name, and you can dynamically include this variable into your script when you run it. Now I recommend that you run through a few examples of your own, as you'll probably find that you'll be using arguments quite frequently. In our next video, we'll look at using redirection in our scripts. We'll see you there.